And welcome to another episode of Mysterious Forces Live. I'm at the 2019 International UFO Congress, and I'm in the vendors area, and I saw the work of this gentleman. His name is Ken Naiff, and what he does is spectacular. And he has a business, Dark Sky Images, and it's the art and science of deep space. And this isn't just someone who's pulling images of deep space off the internet or using some other source. Ken uses a telescope, he does the exposures, and he gets the data and the photographs himself. And then he turns it into something beautiful. Many of these are printed on metal and some on other materials. And it's an extremely interesting process, and I can't even begin to explain it, so I'm going to let Ken explain it. And Ken, tell us how you got into this and what inspired you to do this kind of artwork in the first place.
Well, I've been in astronomy most of my life, and actually my interest started when I saw Sputnik fly over. Many people do not remember Sputnik, but as a young child I saw that fly over, and that sparked my interest in astronomy. I was an armchair astronomer. An armchair astronomer is somebody who doesn't do anything except sit in an armchair reading books and watching DVDs for all my life until I retired, and then I decided my eyes are not good enough to do visual astronomy, so I started doing photographic astronomy, which is called astrophotography. And in actual fact, by doing astrophotography, you see so much more of the night sky compared with just looking through a telescope visually. Because, in fact, what you're doing is taking very long exposures, which is capturing a lot of light, a lot of photons, and in that way you can see very dim objects. So that's... I got excited about being able to see so much of the night sky by doing these astrophotography. And then I started refining my skills, and I got even more excited when I realized that if you spend the time and the patience and the effort, then you can get some really decent photographs of deep space objects.
That's awesome. Would you like to hold up what you have and show the audience the end result of that?
This is the Orion Nebula, and it's iconic. It's a very famous nebula, and it's part of the sword of Orion. For those who know something about astronomy, the Orion constellation is the Archer, actually. Orion is the Archer. And the Orion constellation contains the belt of Orion. And hanging down from the belt of Orion is something that is called the sword of Orion. And in the sword of Orion is this object. When you look up, you think it's a star. And you can see the star with the naked eye, but it's not really a star. It's the very center of this very bright nebula. It's this region here, and it's really many stars, and it's a star-forming region. Stars are being created. It's called a stellar nursery. Yeah. So, and in fact, this is. This is. Normally I shoot through ordinary filters. By ordinary I mean red, green and blue filters, which gives you natural color on my camera. But this is shot through scientific filters. So what I'm looking at here is the photons emitted by three different elements: hydrogen, sulfur and oxygen. And I assign different colors to those so that the eye can see at least some differentiation between those different elements. And so what we get here is what is called in the scientific community false color. I hate that word, false, and I call it scientific color. And this is where the artist comes into play. It's not just scientific because it is astronomy and this object really exists. but now the color spectrum is associated with a different representation than the eye would normally see. So now I'm becoming an artist. So this is the art and science of deep space. That's our byline.
That's amazing. Can you talk about some of the exposure times required? And I know, of course, we can't see it because it's over at his booth, but once I give you the information on where to find their work online, you'll be able to look at it yourself. But what blew me away was your process when you and I talked about it yesterday. Just tell the viewers about those exposure times that are required.
Okay. It depends on the object and how bright the object is, but I'll give you a typical example. I take overall about 150 images of the total object that I'm trying to shoot. And those are 150 images. Each of those are a 15-minute exposures, minutes, not seconds. 15-minute exposures. So when I take those all those exposures, I do through different filters. So I mentioned scientific filters here. I also use red, green, and blue filters for natural color. So I shoot about 40 or 50 images through each of those filters, and I do that in the field. Obviously, if it's and just a 15-minute exposure and I've only got 4 or 5 hours of nighttime, then I can only get about 20 exposures a night. If I need all those exposures, and I do, in order to get a really crisp image, I have to spend several months at nighttime, each night, shooting the same object, collecting, I call it data because I'm an engineer. I'm shooting the same object over and over again, 15-minute exposures through different filters. At the end of the day, I will have over 30 hours of exposure time made up of all these sub-exposures. When I have all that data, now I've got to get to the computer and start removing noise by stacking these images on top of each other, averaging them out for each filter that I've used, and then I eventually combine the data from each filter to give me a color image at the end. The process can take at least a year to get one good image. Actually my latest image, which is a large swath of the Orion constellation, it took me over 2 years to collect the data for it, and then 6 months of processing on the computer.
That's absolutely amazing, and it's fantastic. And you have to go check it out because you won't believe it when you see it. Have any astronomers or observatories or any other commercial interests use your artwork for anything?
No, they. I sort of stay to myself. I've thought and I've been advised to show my artwork in, astronomy magazines, but they want to commandeer the whole of the data. I worked hard for this data. I don't want to share it loosely around. However, I like to call it K through college. I give presentations to, 5th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, community college, and actually to a couple of universities as well. Not so much on astronomy, but mostly about what is really out there and how beautiful it is. Because these guys that are doing astronomy in college, they're just looking at black and white photographs and making measurements and trying to determine distances and masses and things like that, and they're missing the beauty of the universe. It's sort of sad, So what I do is introduce them to the universe from a different aspect, from a different point of view.
That's cool. I know, I don't know a lot about astronomy and telescopes, but in terms of audio equipment, other stuff like that, I'm kind of a tech geek, kind of a gearhead, and I know that I have some gearheads that watch the show. Can you tell us specific details about the kinds of telescopes you're using?
Yeah, I have two telescopes that I use. One is a reflecting telescope, which means it has a large mirror that collects the light before it focuses it and directs it into the camera. And I have a refracting telescope, which is just lenses, and they both they're both better at different kinds of objects. The telescopes are not super large, but they are designed specifically for astrophotography, and they are very accurate. The optics are very precise. The cameras are very important because they are designed to capture very dim objects. So they're very sensitive, and being sensitive, they generate a lot of noise when you just do a 15-minute exposure. So you need to do two things. You need to stack the images, like I said before, to gradually remove all the random noise. But also you have to cool the CCD, the chip inside the camera, down as low as possible. And the cameras I have will cool the chip down 50 degrees C below ambient. So it's pretty specific to the astrophotography. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. I'm utterly fascinated by this. When he started talking to me at his booth yesterday, I was like, you have to come on the show. Like, when I heard this, I knew that the viewers would love this, and it's incredible. You're local here to Arizona. You go out in the desert. How far out do you have to go to get away from light pollution?
Well, Phoenix is notorious for very bad light pollution. There are a few cities around, Tucson and Flagstaff, and Fountain Hills as well, actually, that are working on reducing light pollution significantly, and that's good. But in order to get away from the Phoenix light dome, which is a polluting light dome, I go 250 to 300 miles. And that's to get to really dark sites in Arizona. And by the way, all my work is done in Arizona. I've been to other places, Colorado, Death Valley, and things like that. I traveled for a couple of days. But I've discovered a new law of the universe, and that is the further you travel to do astrophotography, the worse the weather gets.
Yeah, and for people familiar with Arizona weather, what you have in the valley might be one thing. You get out in the higher desert, you might have different weather. And then if you go up into the mountains, you might have, yet again, even more diverse weather. So, elevation plays a big part out west here in what's happening with the weather. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, out of all these hours of looking into deep space, if you've ever seen anything anomalous, and also what your opinion is on the whole extraterrestrial issue.
Okay, that's interesting. I have not seen anything that is unexplainable. However, I have seen some really interesting things, and part of it is associated with space flight. One of the interesting things I saw was the space station being tracked very closely in the night sky by SpaceX, and just before they were going to dock. That was really nice. As far as movement, things that move in the night sky, I told you I take a lot of exposures, and I usually stack them on top of each other. Well, I take on occasion all these exposures that I've done, and it turns into hundreds, and I turn them into a movie. Instead of, as I say, averaging them all out, I make each frame a frame of a movie, and then if they're perfectly aligned, all the stars stay in the same spot, but then you just see something moving across the sky like that. It's usually an asteroid, but who knows? There are many, many asteroids out there, but they should all go in a particular direction, or at least most of them go in a particular direction. And sometimes you see a stray one. Could be a comet, could be anything. My opinion is I'm a believer in the fact that I like Carl Sagan's, I think it was Carl Sagan that said it would be amazing if there was life out there. But it would be even more amazing if we were the only life in the universe. But my belief is there's got to be life out there because the chances are phenomenal. We are one galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. There are 1 billion stars in our galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies. So, and each of those stars have multiple planets going around them on average. And some of those are in the region where life and water is,
in the Goldilocks zone.
That's it. It's the Goldilocks zone. And there's got to be life out there. It's just got to be, it's idiotic to believe that we're the only life in the universe, in my opinion.
Oh, no, that's good. And, you're an engineer, you're an educated guy, so I value your opinion perhaps above people who don't know as much about astronomy. And I'm going to ask you this question. You might not have expected this question, but it came to me while listening to you talk. You do your educational talks, you're exposing people to the process and how this is done. What do you think the legacy of this body of work that you have is, and what would you like that legacy to be?
Oh, that's interesting. I think it's mostly associated with children. I like to think that some of my work, and even just visiting the booth here, we concentrate on the children. And when I give presentations, it's mostly to children. The legacy would be really nice that children are awakened to astronomy, to the universe, to engineering, to science, and to an open mind. That's what I would like the legacy to be.
That's awesome. So tell us the name of your company, where people can find you online, and whether you're going to be doing any other appearances in public where they can actually come and see your artwork and buy it. Don't just look at it. Don't just talk about how cool it is. Buy it. Because when you buy it, you support the artist. And we, on this show, support small businesses, independent artists, and we like that kind of thing. So if you think it's beautiful and you take the time to check it out, spend a little bit of money and hang it on your wall, because I'll tell you what, you're going to wow your friends and your family when they walk in and they see something like this hanging on your wall. Where can we find your work?
The company is Dark Sky Images, and the website is Dark Sky Images by Ken, all one word, darkskyImagesbyken.com. And we don't do very many shows. In fact, this is the first time I've been to this conference, and we will be coming back because this has been a lot of fun, and talking about opening the minds of children. My mind's been opened as well, just coming here, talking to people. We go to Space Fest, that's in Tucson, and we do shows throughout. We're going to La Jolla, and there's a show there. So we travel around quite a bit. But check us out on darkskyImages.com, because we keep that up to date with all the places we're going to.
That's awesome. So check out the calendar on their website. Ken Naiff is the artist's name. He's an engineer. He does astrophotography. It's fantastic stuff. Check it out. I couldn't recommend it more highly. And I want to thank you for spending your time here with us. There's a lot of competition for your attention out there. There's a lot of shows you could be watching, but you're watching this show. And you're watching Ken here describe a fascinating process where it's a perfect blend of science and art. And man, that's my kind of thing. That gets me passionate, that meeting of science and art. I love it. So thank you for watching. And if you haven't hit that like button, please do it. If you haven't subscribed, please do it. And we're also going to put a link to his website down in the description. So look for that down below and click on it. And please share this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again from the 2019 International UFO Congress right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you, everybody. I love you. Take care.